It's just past 5 p.m. across India and live from New Delhi. You're watching DD India Global. We'll get you the top stories from India and the region. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj, and for news from the rest of the world, I'm joined by my colleague in London, Ollie Barrett. Ollie, good to have you with us.
Siddharth, it's good to be with you. It's 12:30 p.m. here in London, 1:30 p.m. across Central Europe. Coming up, the latest poll preparations in India, the latest from the UK election campaign, and what G7 finance ministers are discussing in Italy. First, the headlines.
India to vote in the penultimate phase of General Election 2024. Polling in 58 constituencies across 6 states and 2 union territories. UK lawmakers to leave Parliament on Friday or the last time before July 4th election. PM Sunak confirms anti-smoking plan will not become law before polls. China staged mock missile strikes on Taiwan by dispatching fighter jets carrying live missiles with bombers. Says move to punish Taiwan's new president, Lai Ching-te. All right, let's get you the latest on world's largest election in India. The world's largest election in the world's largest democracy is nearing its end. Polling in the second last phase of India's parliamentary election will take place on 25th of May. 50 seats across 6 states and 2 union territories are up for grabs. The campaigning for 6th phase election ended on Thursday. A total of 889 candidates are in the fray. Polling will also be conducted in Jammu and Kashmir's Anantnag Rajouri constituency after the polling date was postponed from 7th May to 25th. In the 6th phase of the ongoing Lok Sabha elections, all 10 Lok Sabha seats in the northern state of Haryana are going to polls on Saturday. All preparations are in place for polling tomorrow. DD India's Amritpal Singh sent us this report. Have a look.
Preparations for Saturday's polling in Haryana, where 10 parliamentary constituencies go to polls, have been completed. You can see behind me, polling parties have gathered here to collect their EVMs from the distribution centers where they've been kept in strong rooms. They're getting these EVMs issued and moving to their respective polling stations. There are about 20,000 polling stations across the state. Adequate arrangements of security have been made at these polling stations. About 35,000 police personnel of the Haryana police have been deployed. Apart from that, 20,000 additional home guard from the neighboring state of Punjab, from the states of Gujarat and Madhya Pradesh have been deployed too. 112 companies of central paramilitary forces have been deployed across the state to ensure free and smooth polling. At the polling stations, adequate facilities have been made available given the heat. Water coolers, fans. This time around, the Haryana Chief Electoral Officer has issued an app, an interesting app called the Voters in Queue, where a voter can check the length of the queue at his or her polling booth and accordingly arrive at the polling booth. And also very interestingly, this time around, the BLOs who issue voter slips issued invitation cards like marriage invitation cards to voters to come and participate in this festival of democracy. With cameraman Saurabh Bakshi, this is Amritpal Singh for DD India in Panchkula, Haryana.
Well, the stage is all set for the 6th phase of polling in the Indian state of West Bengal. Polling parties are being dispatched for the booths. Vishal Barristo reports from Midnapore. Have a look.
8 seats would go to poll in the 6th phase from Bengal on the 25th of May. I'm here in the Mindapur College, and as you can see, all these political parties, they are being dispatched to their respective polling stations. I have a team. Let's talk to them and find out how many members are there in your team and where are you going?
We are 4 in our team, and we are going to the mission school.
आप लोग का ट्रेनिंग अच्छे से हुआ है? आप लोग तैयार हैं इलेक्शंस के लिए?
यस, हम लोग बिल्कुल तैयार है। कल इलेक्शन है, हम लोग सब ले लिए मटेरियल्स, अब अटेंडेंस होगा, उसके बाद पुलिस टैगिंग होगा, फिर व्हीकल्स मिलते ही हम लोग बूथ निकल जाएंगे।
So there you heard Piali and Shanta, they are all prepared for tomorrow's polling, but they are not the only one. As you can see, all these polling parties, they are ready and ready for elections tomorrow. With cameraman Piyush in Midnapur, this is Vishal Baristo for DD India.
Now, as the focus shifts to 6th phase polls on Saturday, many of you will visit polling booths in National Capital and other parts of the country tomorrow to cast your vote. Our next report by Rahul Upadhyay tells you how these polling booths are set up and what are the criteria to set up a booth at a particular location. Have a look.
And many of you must have visited to polling stations to cast your vote at your respective constituencies. But have you ever thought how these polling stations are get set up? What are the criteria and procedure behind this? We have tried to find out. Let's take a look.
Electioneering in India is a big and mammoth exercise. It involves advanced planning, execution of well-planned strategies to ensure free and fair elections. It begins with announcement of date for election. The process of setting up of polling stations follows certain norms and principles. The district election officer is assigned the responsibility to set up and publish the list of polling stations in their district. There are some principles on the basis of which polling stations are set up. These include ensuring that voters do not have to travel more than 2 kilometers to cast their vote.
What we have done is on P-1 day, हम इनको dispatch कर रहे हैं. We are sending them to their polling locations. We have tell them which polling location each party will be going. So they are in the buses. They are taking their polling material along with EVMs. So sector officer will go along with them. They will set up their polling booth. They will stay there.
These principles, however, are not set in stone. Polling stations can even cater to less than 300 voters in case access is a problem. For example, in a rugged terrain. In cases where the number of electors exceeds 1500, auxiliary polling stations are set up, preferably in the same building. Polling station locations are chosen carefully, usually in a government or semi-government institutions. They try to avoid using private buildings unless it's absolutely necessary. Polling stations are equipped with adequate shade structures like tents, canopies or umbrellas, seating, cooling devices like fans, proper ventilation, drinking water and ORS.
At polling location, we have made all the arrangements for their night stay, for water, and for heat wave for tomorrow. For even voters, we have made waiting shed, coolers are there. Then we have kept ORS. Then there are waiting areas. Then there is a medical room is there.
In addition to this, the ECI has also identified polling stations which are likely to face heat waves based on India Meteorological Department data.
These are some of the arrangements which Election Commission official make for us. Amid all these efforts, voter participation play a major role to make an election success. And for this, we must have to understand the value of our vote, and we should come out and cast our vote. With camera person Anil Thakur, this is Rahul Upadhyay from New Delhi for DD India.
All right, viewers, we take you to Britain now, where all eyes are here after Prime Minister Rishi Sunak suddenly announced July 4th as the date for national elections. Britain's lawmaker will leave Parliament on Friday for the last time before an election is held in 6 weeks. My colleague Ollie Barrett is in London and gives us more on this and other stories making headlines around the world. Ollie, a tough fight on the cards between the Conservatives and the Labour Party?
Very tough indeed, Siddharth, and the campaigning is very much underway, even as you say, UK lawmakers are finishing up their parliamentary business in the coming hours ahead of that July the 4th parliamentary election. Now, a number of laws that could be passed in the next couple of hours include bills which would enable compensation for the victims of the contaminated blood scandal. However, Rishi Sunak has confirmed that a smoking ban for younger generations is not likely to become law before elections.
And the smoking ban, of course, disappointed to not be able to get that through at the end of this session, given the time available. But what I'd say is that's evidence of the bold action that I'm prepared to take. That's the type of Prime Minister I am. That's the type of leadership that I bring.
Now, Labour leader Keir Starmer's using a visit to Scotland to promote his plan for a publicly owned green electricity generator. And we can talk live now to DD India's John Beaver, who is in Bristol in the west of England. And John, energy policy, a big focus on the campaign trail today.
Yes, it absolutely is. And you're right, this ambitious plan from the Labour Party, what they call Great British Energy, which will be a publicly owned company, a green energy company. Now, Keir Starmer, the leader of the Labour Party, he says that will invest in homegrown clean energy and cut bills for good. The Conservatives, though, disagree and say that actually the whole thing will be very expensive and could risk jobs by moving focus away from North Sea oil and gas. The Conservatives say it would take us back to square one by making voters pay more for net zero. So here we are only 2 days into the campaign and already strong words from both sides in terms of the best way forward when it comes to this vital issue of energy security.
And John, Parliament wrapping up with some of the government's key legislation left unfinished.
Yeah, absolutely. As we heard there, Prime Minister Rishi Sunak admitting that his ambitious smoking bill won't make it through Parliament in time to become law. As a reminder, this was a bill that is going to gradually increase the age at which you must be in order to buy cigarettes every year. So in effect, phasing out smoking in the UK over a generation. It's certainly something that the Conservatives wanted to do. Rishi Sunak saying he's disappointed it's not going to get through in time. Of course, his critics say, well, actually, it's him who set the election date, so it's his fault that it won't make it through in time. I think worth pointing out, though, that the Labour Party are also supporting it, so that if they won the next election, we do expect that this bill would be back in front of Parliament sometime after the election in July.
John Beaver in Bristol, thank you. The Israeli military has recovered the bodies of 3 hostages taken into Gaza by Hamas on October the 7th last year. The bodies were recovered in a special Israeli military operation carried out in Jabalia in northern Gaza, where there's been significant fighting in recent days. Israeli authorities say more than 120 hostages kidnapped on October the 7th are still being held by Hamas in Gaza.
There are men, women, children and babies being held by Hamas in living hell across our border in Gaza. We will not stop fighting for their freedom. Every decent country in the world would do the same.
Israel's Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu is expected to address a joint session of the US Congress soon. This as there is increased tensions with President Joe Biden over the Gaza conflict. During the Israeli embassy's annual Independence Day celebrations, US Speaker Mike Johnson said that Netanyahu's address would be a testament to Washington's backing for Israel during its most challenging period.
We will soon be hosting Prime Minister Netanyahu at the Capitol for a joint session of Congress. Yes. This will be a timely and I think a very strong show of support to the Israeli government in their time of greatest need.
The International Court of Justice will deliver a ruling shortly on South Africa's request to order an end to Israel's Rafah operation in Gaza. South Africa had petitioned the International Court of Justice for it. While the United Nations' primary legal entity lacks enforcement capabilities, its rulings do hold some international influence. A verdict against Israel could further contribute to its international political isolation. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov claims Ukraine used US-supplied weapons to attack targets beyond the conflict zone and hit civilian infrastructure.
For a very long time, they were stating that they do not encourage the use of Western arms against targets in Russia. Then they said they would not allow it. Then they advised against using it again. But in fact, they are waging a war against us, and American weapons have already been used on a variety of objects outside the conflict zone.
Two people were killed by a Ukrainian missile strike near Simferopol, the second largest city on the Crimean Peninsula. In a separate incident, Russian air defences intercepted 3 missiles over Crimea and neutralised 3 Ukrainian maritime drones. Finance ministers and central bankers from the G7 group of nations are trying to make progress on how to use frozen Russian assets in the West to help Ukraine. The 2-day meetings kicked off in Italy, where they're expected to discuss as well China's industrial policies, some of which they consider unfair, artificial intelligence and taxes for multinational companies. DD India's Trent Murray is joining us live now from Berlin. And Trent, finance ministers are laying some of the ground for the G7 Leaders Summit next month.
Yeah, that's right, Ollie. Those finance chiefs meeting in the Italian region of Stresa. It's about 2 hours from Milan, a very picturesque part of the country, but I'm not sure they'll have much time to enjoy the local landmarks because there is a lot on the agenda that they are discussing. We know first and foremost Ukraine, a very high agenda item, including this plan which seems to be gaining steam in G7 countries to use seized Russian assets that are held abroad in some of those countries to help fund Ukraine's military defense. We know some countries are looking at proposals to use those seized assets as collateral to maybe provide Ukraine with a loan. Some estimates suggest that loan could be $50 billion US. But what we are hearing is that some of those delegations are stressing caution about not getting, I suppose, too excited or too expecting this plan to come together at this summit, because there is a lot of technical and legal intricacies that they would need to get through. We also know China's growing exports to both Europe and the US high on the agenda. Of course, we saw that bombshell announcement from President Biden last week to slap a 100% tariff on Chinese cars and other technology like solar panels into the US. We know that is going to be discussed, but certainly the feeling amongst Europeans is they don't necessarily want to get too involved, particularly if it causes a trade war for their own exports. And then just finally, I think we do have to look at global taxation. It is a very tricky topic, but they are trying to navigate it. We know a global wealth tax is being discussed. This is something that Brazil has proposed alongside France. And we also know a global minimum on multinational taxes is something being discussed. But again, we aren't expecting any major announcements, but this is very much, I guess you could say, the warm-up event for the main summit, which takes place next month in Italy, in Puglia, when those G7 leaders will meet in Italy.
OK, Trent, thank you. And with that, I will hand it back to you. Sit up.
Thank you so much, Ollie. Really appreciate it. Ollie Barrett from London. Now, still to come on DD India Global. Spiritual leader Sri Sri Ravi Shankar speaks exclusively to DD India, says India is unstoppable. At least 100 people feared dead in a massive landslide in a remote village of Papua New Guinea.
There is enormous power in people's narratives, especially when they tell their own story. We meet some people and communities who tell us how it is done.
Anything hazardous to humans is dumped here in North Chennai. We need to tell these stories because we are the ones who are affected by it.
Delhi Metro's philosophy is very clear. We want to generate non-conventional energy. Apart from the whatever is supplied by the grid, we want to generate a lot of energy through solar sources.
The benefit of running an MRF is that it protects me from the rain and harsh conditions outdoors. Work goes on even in hot weather and during the rainy season.
India is one of the climate swing states. We have to get India right to get emissions and to be able to really combat climate change.
You're watching DD India Global. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj. In an exclusive interview with DD India, Sri Ravi Shankar stated that India is unstoppable and it will keep going ahead.
आप बड़े ancient हो, you are very ancient, और you are ever new also. अपने आप को संभाल, अपने मन को संभालें, और आप इस दुनिया में हैं कुछ करने के लिए. इस बात को मन में रखें और आगे बढ़ते जाएं.
और India's way forward?
India's way forward.
What is the India way?
India is unstoppable. It will keep going ahead and be part of it. Be part of the positive challenges and the progress that you need to go through.
When asked on unwavering faith in the women of India, Sri Ravi Shankar said that women are already empowered in India. Take a listen as Sakal Bhatt speaks with them in DD India's exclusive interview.
I remember आपने कहा था कि if women are given the most challenging task, they have the ability to finish it even before 10 years. So what's this unflinching faith in the women of India? Where does this come from? Your thoughts?
You know, from our mythology, if you see, all the important portfolios are all given to women. The Defense Ministry, Durga.
Yes.
Education Ministry, Saraswati. Human Resource. And then Finance Ministry, Lakshmi. We don't write Mr. and Mrs. We write first
Mrs.
women
and
come, Mrs. and Mr. Srimati and Shri. So women are already empowered in this country. Mother India we call. No other nation calls their nation as mother. So we have ingrained this principle of women empowerment from millions of years.
This is our heritage, part of our legacy.
Part of our heritage, yeah.
And days after Taiwan's new president Lai Ching-te took office, China on Friday called for an end to the island nation's independence efforts. China also objected to Taiwan's decision to participate in a key World Health Organization meeting this month. China's response came after the United States and several of its allies, including Britain, Germany and Japan, issued a joint statement on Friday asking Taiwan to participate in the meeting.
Taiwan is China's Taiwan, and it is not the turn of the United States to say anything about it. The root cause of the tense situation in the Taiwan States lies in the attempts of DPP authorities to use the United States to seek independence and some forces in the United States under the guise of maintaining regional peace and stability. It is attempting to use Taiwan to control China.
And in an attempt to punish Taiwan's new president Lai Ching-te, China staged mock missile strikes and dispatched fighter jets carrying live missiles along with bombers. The drills in the Taiwan Strait included mock bombing of foreign vessels. The bombers set up multiple attack formations in Taiwan's eastern waters, carrying out simulated attacks in coordination with naval ships. China criticized Lai's inaugural speech in which he urged Beijing to stop its threats and said the two sides of the strait were not subservient to each other. Taiwan's defense forces deployed F-16 fighter jet, a mobile air defense system and surveillance drone to monitor and shadow China's drills around the island. Taiwan's Foreign Minister Lin Chia-lung said his country won't give in to China as drills continue.
We will not make any concessions because of this Chinese military exercise, because it concerns the development of democracy in Taiwan. The inauguration ceremony of the Taiwan government, which was elected by the people, is a happy event, and the fact that Taiwan is a democratic country will not be changed just because Communist China declares that Taiwan is a part of China.
And at least 100 people are feared dead in a massive landslide that occurred in a remote village of Papua New Guinea on early Friday morning. The death toll is expected to increase. The incident that happened 600 kilometers north of the capital, Port Moresby, razed homes, gardens and everything else to the ground. The number of people trapped within the debris remains unknown. Search and rescue is underway for survivors. And let's take a look at other stories making news around the world. In a renewed excavation attempt in an ancient city of Dara in Turkey, the church, a palace, shopping center, dungeons and an arsenal have been found. Along with this, more than 10,000 archaeological remains such as jewelry, candles, arrowheads and some sort of pots and pans were unearthed by the team. A regular star of Marvel franchise and famous as Thor among his fans, actor Chris Hemsworth was honored with a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame on Thursday. He described the ceremony as surreal and thanked his fans for their support. The 30th edition of charity gala organized by AMFAR, the Foundation for AIDS Research, was hosted by actor Demi Moore on Thursday. Held annually alongside the Cannes Film Festival, the event saw legendary pop icon Cher, Nick Jonas and people from fashion and sports in attendance. Warm and humid spring has made roses bloom earlier this year for Bulgarian farmers. One of the top producers of the fragrant rose oil globally, Bulgaria produces 2 to 3.5 tons of rose oil annually. To get better quality of oil, the petals are picked very early in the morning when the essential oil content is highest. That's all for this edition of DD India Global, but let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Siddharth Bharadwaj from all of us here in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India Global.